I'm your host, Deandra Grant. Today we're going to be featuring the wines of Lasseter Family Winery located in Sonoma, California. I recently visited Lasseter, fell in love with their wines, much to my husband's chagrin, joined the wine club. So we're going to talk a little bit about each one of the ones I've got here on the bar with me today. This is their rosé. It's called Anjou. It is 55% Syrah, 33% Grenache. I am typically not a rosé fan. I have just recently started finding rosés that I like. I think what I don't like about rosé normally is that they tend to be a little bit sweet and they often have a little bitterness at the finish. But this wine doesn't have any of those problems. It's a very good rosé, great summer wine by the pool, really chilled. Highly recommend it. I also loved their white. This is Voila, and it is 50% Semillon and 30% Sauvignon Blanc. I tend to not be a Chardonnay fan. If I'm drinking whites, I'll drink a lot of Sauvignon Blanc. This one's great though because it's a blend. It's more of a French style. Tastes a little bit more like a French Bordeaux than it does a Sauvignon Blanc. So if you're iffy on Sauvignon Blanc, you might really like this wine. If you love Sauvignon Blanc, you're probably gonna like it a lot. The other wine I've got here is their Zinfandel. This one is from an old vine Zinfandels. Their vines, I understand, are over 100 years old. They're at Lasseter. I'm a big Zin fan, but I often am disappointed with the Zins that I find. This Zinfandel is very good. If I'm buying it, it's a good Zin. If you are a Zin fan, you might want to try this one. There's a lot of berry in it. It's got a little bit of pepper, pretty jammy, very, very good Zinfandel. And then this is their red blend. It is Passage, and it's a Merlot Cabernet blend. One of the things I find often when I'm in Sonoma is I tend to be more of a Cabernet Zinfandel drinker. I'm not a big Chardonnay fan or a Pinot fan, and that's what you tend to find a lot in Sonoma. If you find a really good Cabernet or red blend, it's kind of unusual, but this is one of the exceptions. This is a very good red blend. So if you like Cabernet, you like Merlot, you're probably gonna like Passage. So take a look at Lasseter Wines. They've got a Facebook page. Beautiful property, fantastic place to visit, lovely wine room, highly recommend it. I understand that the owner, Mr. Lasseter, is either a founder or used to be at the head of Pixar, so there's a Disney connection. And my understanding is that if you go to Disney properties or if you're on a Disney cruise ship, you're going to find Lasseter wines on their wine list. So there's a little Disney involved with Lasseter. Check them out. I think you'll like it. So let's talk about what a standard drink is. What does it actually mean? I've got 3 different alcohols in front of me. I've got 5 ounces of table wine. In this case, it's a Cabernet. I've got 1 1/4 ounces of Jack Daniels, and I've got a common American, well, it's not American beer. I guess it's from Texas, it's American. A Shiner Bock, which you'll commonly see served at social gatherings and in bars. All of these have the same amount of alcohol in them. And I find there's a lot of misconceptions out there. A lot of people don't understand that. They think, well, if I'm drinking beer, it's better than if I'm doing shots of tequila. Well, possibly. It depends on how many you're having and over what period of time. But if you do take this and drink it, and you drink this, you're consuming the same amount of ethanol. Behind me is a board that I commonly use in trial when I'm trying to educate jurors on this concept. It demonstrates that, 12-ounce regular beer, 5 ounces of table wine, 1 1/4 ounces of 80 proof spirits, all have equivalent amounts of alcohol in them. And this isn't kind of important to know because if you're stopped for a driving while intoxicated investigation and a police officer asks you how many drinks you've had, this is what they're thinking. But it may not be what you're thinking because you might be counting containers that you drank out of, whether instead of the amounts of alcohol you actually had. So this is how we define a standard drink. Now let's talk a little bit about wine. Specifically, we're going to discuss the size of wine glasses. When you go to a friend's house, they might serve you a glass that looks a little bit like this. Might also find that in a restaurant. You're at a steakhouse, you're ordering a big bold red with your dinner. You might end up with a glass like this. Both of them are obviously capable of holding wine in different quantities. What's in front of me, what I've already poured for you, is 5 ounces of what's considered table wine. It's a Cabernet. This glass obviously can hold more. Let's move over this 5 ounces so you can see how little of that glass that wine takes up. And this becomes an issue because when you say to me, when you're sitting in my office, I only had 3 glasses of wine. Okay, well, let's talk about those glasses of wine. Who was pouring them and how big were the glasses? Because it's very easy to have more than 3 standard drinks of wine when you're not pouring them yourself, or a friend is pouring them, or you are pouring them, but you're using a very big glass. So if you're drinking wine out of this glass and you've got 5 ounces and you have 3 of them, then you're good. You've had, 3 standard drinks. But if you're drinking out of this glass and you're pouring up to here, then you may end up having 2 glasses of wine for each glass you're counting as 1. So it's important to understand quantity when you're pouring wine into a wine glass. If you're in a very nice restaurant, a lot of times they'll have a little mark on the glass that they're serving you with that tells the server when to stop pouring, so they don't pour more than a standard pour. You might find that in some nicer restaurants. You may find that they bring you a little carafe and they just pour the carafe in your glass at the table. Just be careful if you're at a dinner party with your friends, like happens to me often, where as soon as my glass gets down a little bit low, someone's filling it back up. And by the end of the evening, I don't know how many glasses of wine I had. I just know I kept drinking wine all night. Don't fall into that pattern. Just be very careful. If you're going to be opting to drive after drinking, you really need to be cognizant of how much alcohol you consumed. This is a standard drink. If you drink this much, you've had 1 drink. If you drink more than this out of this glass, you've had more than 1 drink. Don't count containers, you have to count ounces. So let's talk about beer. I'm actually not a beer drinker. Anyone that knows me knows that. But I do know quite a bit about beer. It's important in what I do for a living. So in front of me over here on the left is a bunch of beers that I know people like and drink pretty regularly. We've got Heineken. Heineken happens to be my father's favorite beer. He just calls it the green one. And then I have a dear friend in West Virginia, Harley Wagner. He's a Miller Lite drinker. The thing about all of these beers that are in front of me is the alcohol concentration in all of them is a little bit different. It varies, but the range is anywhere from about 4.4% alcohol all the way up to this Dallas Blonde Ale, which is, I think, 5.2% alcohol. So if you're drinking one of these beers, you're right there in the range. If you have one of them, you're having a standard drink. The problem that people run into is that they go to a bar and they get a glass and they're being served draft beers. And if the draft is this size and you're drinking out of this size of a glass, that's a 12-ounce glass. But if the glass is bigger than this and it's full, you're not drinking 1 beer, you're drinking more than 1 beer. If you're drinking out of a 16-ounce glass, then obviously you're drinking more than a standard drink of 12 ounces of beer. And I'll have people tell me, oh, I only had 3 beers. Well, really, what kind of glasses were you drinking them out of? If you're drinking out of bottles, you're pretty safe, as long as it's this kind of beer. What we find a lot these days is IPAs and craft beers and German beers are all very popular. I did a quick search on the internet this week and found out that the alcohol range can go all the way up to 9.8% for some of these kind of exotic craft beers. And that's a big jump from 4.4 that we're talking about over here. So if you're drinking craft beers, even if you're only drinking them in this size of glass, 12 ounces, you're actually having more than 1 standard drink with each one of those. So let's go, you're at the bar and you're drinking your 12 ounces of Michelob Ultra, which quite frankly, most of you do not drink Michelob Ultra probably, but if you did, there you go, that's what it looks like. That is a standard drink. But let's say you decide you're going to order a Pilsner, and I will hopefully not, oh, I'm just spilling it a little bit. Let's see how much of the glass this takes up. So you order a Pilsner, and if it's full to the top, you're getting more than a standard drink. You're getting a little bit more than that. So when you're out drinking, you've got to be responsible. Obviously, the best bet is not to get behind the wheel of the car if you've been drinking. But it's not illegal to drink alcohol and drive so long as you're not intoxicated. What you've got to do is count what you're drinking. And if you're drinking more than you need to be, or that you should be, or that is safe for you to operate a car, then Uber, take a Lyft, get a friend to drive you home. Don't risk it. Be cognizant of how much you're drinking, and know and understand that with different beers, there's different alcohol levels. You're safer down here with craft beers, cut it in half. Let's talk about whiskey and bourbon and tequila and rum and all the things people like to do shots of. In front of me are some different containers that you may find in a bar. You've got basically your standard shot glass. It's got 1 1/4 ounces of whiskey in it. I've also got 1 1/4 ounces of whiskey in this glass and in this glass. This is one that you might find scotch in. Someone may order a scotch on the rocks, and you can see how little the amount of alcohol appears in this glass. So if you are, like a lot of people who drink scotch, ordering 2 fingers of scotch, you're going to get more than a standard drink in that glass. Same as if you are using this type of cocktail glass. Look at this, it looks just like a tiny amount of alcohol in there. What if you are ordering a top shelf margarita on the rocks and it's full all the way to the top when you get it? Do you think that's a standard drink, or do you think it's got more alcohol in it than this? Likewise, if you're doing shots, an experienced bartender knows exactly how to pour a standard drink when it comes to a shot glass like this. But sometimes I'm in bars where we have a bigger shot glass, something more like this, and you can see that that is only about half full. So if I get a big glass like this and it's full to the top, I'm not getting 1 shot, I'm getting 2. I've got this nice square glass right here that my husband is insisting that I put into this video because it is representative of his fraternity, which is Fiji. So look at this square glass, only half full, which means if you fill this up, you're getting 2 standard drinks and not just 1. And then giving a shout out to my sorority, Sigma Theta Tau, Trinity University, Winter Formal, 1988. Here's the shooter. Yes, gals, I still have it. Look at this glass. It's not even half full of alcohol. So if you're drinking, a lemon drop shot at a bar and they give you a shooter glass, or even if you just get a shooter glass full of bourbon, you're not drinking 1 shot. You're drinking possibly about 2 1/4 standard drinks if it's full to the top. So when you're out, if the bartender's not using one of these to measure and they're just free pouring into containers, it's really up to you to know how much you're drinking if you're planning to get behind the wheel of the car, or if you're just trying to not over drink on a particular occasion. You want to be careful, you don't want to get drunk. Just be cognizant of what you're drinking, how much, and what kind of container it's in. Who doesn't love a great martini? I mean, martinis are proof God loves us and wants us to be happy. I go out to dinner before I have a steak dinner at a nice restaurant, I'm ordering a martini. So let's talk about sizes of martini glasses. What I've got here on my right side is an antique martini glass. So if you were drinking a martini, say circa 1940, it would have been served in a glass about this size. I've marked it, I hope you can see right here. I've got vodka in this glass, and you can see right here where the mark is this is a standard drink. So if this glass is full, as long as the rest of that fluid is fruit juice or ice or something along those lines, you're okay. But if the alcohol's coming all the way up to here, you're having more than 1 standard drink with that glass. And then we've got this martini glass where I've also marked right here the level at which you're having a standard drink. But if this glass is full all the way up to the top and it's mostly alcohol, you're really having more than 2 drinks, or at least 2 standard drinks when you drink this glass. And quite frankly, I've been in restaurants recently where the martini glass was even bigger than this one. And so a lot of times people, they count containers and they'll have this and think, well, I only had 1 drink. I only had 1 martini. When in fact, you're likely drinking 2 standard drinks with just this glass. If it's even bigger glass, a bigger martini glass, and don't even get me started on the sizes of margarita glasses, then you're really having more to drink than you realize. And you've got to be careful with that. You're out with your girlfriends and you're going to just have a little happy hour and everyone's having a martini or they're having 2 martinis and you think you're safe to drive, but it doesn't hit you till you get out to the car that, oh my goodness, I must have had more to drink than I thought I did. So just be careful when it comes to martinis. They can sneak up on you because you can be consuming a great deal more alcohol than you realize. So let's review what we've learned in this episode. Number 1, Lasseter wines. Give them a try. Very good. Shout out to all my friends at Lasseter. Number 2, when it comes to wine, the glass size should be irrelevant. The pour needs to be the same every time, 5 ounces. If you're getting more than 5 ounces, you're having more than 1 glass of wine. In a big glass like this, quite frankly, depending on how much you pour, you could get up to 3, even possibly 4 glasses of wine out of this 1 glass and still think you're only having 1 glass of wine. Number 3, when it comes to shots and mixed drinks like margaritas, top shelf margaritas on the rocks, or scotch, you have to be careful of the glass size. You've got to be aware that when you do get one of those drinks, in all likelihood, it's more than 1 standard drink. And really be careful when it comes to shots in a regular shot glass and shooters. People love to get shooters. Shooters are almost always 2 times the shot glass, so be careful of that. Now, number 4, let's talk about beer. Beer, watch your container size. Obviously, if you're drinking out of a big glass, you're getting more than 1 beer. But also, please remember that you could be getting twice as much alcohol depending on the kind of beer you're drinking. So be aware of the alcohol content of the types of beer you do decide to order in a bar. And number 5, martinis. Please be aware that in a modern martini glass that you're going to get served at the next bar or restaurant you go to, it could be as much as 3 standard drinks in that 1 martini glass. So you're not having 1 drink, you're having 2 to 3 drinks, 1 glass. I hope you've learned a lot today. I look forward to the next episode. And until that time, I'll be here whining about the law.